Monday, first client of the day. Ah, yes. 8:30 a.m, Richard Fallon. Haven't seen him for about 18 months. I wonder if he won a seat at the last election. Can't imagine how he managed it if he did. If he was my MP, I'd shoot him. So, Richard, it's lovely to see you again. God, you're looking rough. You're looking well.
Am I? I don't bloody feel it. You don't mind my bringing this coffee in, do you? It's just I've been up most of the night trying to sort out my bank account. Someone's been trying to use my bank card details in New York, apparently, to buy internet porn and fish food. That's the bit I don't understand. Fish food. Why?
Maybe they have a fish. Why else?
Anyway, I've spent quite a lot of time reassuring the bank that I'm not in New York. I'm not a porn user. You can imagine the fallout if that got into the papers. And I have no use for fish food, so my card's been cancelled, which is an absolute bugger. I had to borrow 20 quid from my secretary at 7 o'clock this morning. She had to come round on her bike in her pyjamas.
Oh, I can see that must be very annoying. Particularly for her.
And, of course, the other thing that worries me is that the woman who called from the bank, I mean, she's probably convinced it was me, an elected member of Parliament, downloading the porn. And how can I trust her not to sell this information to the newspapers? Even though, as I said, it's completely untrue. I'm not in New York, I'm here in London, and I have never had any interest in pornography. Except when I was young, obviously. Do you mind if I put my feet up on this stool? I'm absolutely exhausted.
Not at all. So what I'm picking up from what you've been saying, Richard, is...
You're probably wondering why I'm here.
The last time we met, you were very worried that you might lose your seat.
Yes, well, I didn't.
Congratulations.
The problem is, though, I only won it by 7 votes, after 6 recounts.
Well, that must have been very nerve-wracking for you. Nevertheless, you still won.
It was extremely stressful. Do you remember my wife was trying to leave me?
Yes, I do.
Well, the thing is, I persuaded her to stay for the election campaign, for which I had to pay her by the hour. And she wasn't cheap, believe me. We're not talking minimum wage here. In many respects, it was more like prostitution than wifehood. I mentioned this to her, and she said, bingo, you've got it in one. Why do you think I'm leaving you? And she had a very bitter look on her face, which she certainly didn't have when I first met her. I mean, I wouldn't have married her if she had. Bitterness is just not attractive, is it? No matter which way you cut it.
Do you still love her?
Sorry?
Do you still love her?
Love her?
Yes.
Well, I mean, love. That's a difficult one. Do I love her? I suppose the answer is not much. A bit. I mean, she's a very nice woman. What I mean by that is she's a very nice woman if you're not married to her. She's got lovely hair, very bouncy and shiny, but, you know, bouncy, shiny hair only goes so far in a marriage. She's been extremely trying recently, and that's putting it mildly. What happened, right, is that I have had to move out of the family home because she said she needed the house for the children, which was fair enough, albeit in a cruel, heartless sort of way, until about a month ago when she sent Toby to live with me in my tiny flat, the size of a cat basket. And I told you about Toby, didn't I? He's vast, and even vaster now than when we last spoke. He's like a giant porpoise, but without the playfulness. She said a boy needs his father, Richard, and deposited him on the doorstep with a rucksack full of computer games and some odd socks. So now I've got a padlock on the fridge and no snacks at all in the house. And Toby has locked himself in his room with, I know for a fact, I saw him smuggling them in, 10 catering packs of crisps and a tin of golden syrup.
What do you think he's doing?
Well, he's eating, of course. What else would he be doing?
Oh, I see.
Unless he's daubing himself with syrup and rolling in the crisps. God, I hope not. Oh, I wish I hadn't thought of that now. Of course, he'll have to come out at some point, if only to use the bathroom. But I have a very responsible job. I can't spend all day waiting for him to emerge, and even if I could, then what? What on earth am I supposed to do with him? It's half-term, so he doesn't even have school to go to. My own adolescence was blighted, as you know, by being the size of an ocean-going liner. Sometimes, even now, I dream that I'm meeting the Queen, and suddenly I realise that, A, I'm still enormously fat, and B, my clothes are far too small and are audibly splitting at the seams. The buttons pop off my shirt like bullets, and my gargantuan pink wobbling chest heaves into view just below the Queen's eyeline, and then all my teeth fall out. Usually I wake up at this point, thankfully. But once I didn't, and the Queen produced a set of false teeth from her handbag and said, "Please use these, Mr. Fallon. They belong to my mother." And then I woke up. Can you see my foot twitching? It's been doing that recently. I've no idea what it is. Look, there it goes. What do you think it is?
Well, I'm not a medical doctor.
I think it may be that thing called restless legs syndrome. Except it's just my foot, and just the left one. Restless left foot syndrome. OK, I'm going to ignore it. Have you any idea where we got to at the end of my last session all those months ago?
You've been asked to be a panellist on a quiz show. You were very excited about it.
I don't think I was I? For Tee-hee Television, which no one's ever heard of. Tee-hee as in ha-ha. It's probably gone bust by now. The show didn't go terribly well either. Didn't you read about it in the papers?
I don't think I did.
I'd been taking this antihistamine thing because I'd been sneezing for a week. I'm not exaggerating. An entire week. I was bloody exhausted. And I had one sip of wine before the recording. And that's all I remember, basically. I'm sure it can't have been as bad as they said, although they did show me some of the evidence the next day. Apparently I ran down the desk thing, I've no idea how I got on it, and broke all sorts of water glasses, and also the host's collarbone when I fell on him, and they had to pull the programme. Actually, they had to pull the rest of the series because, of course, the host was in hospital. And you should have seen the tabloids. Fallon falls on his face, MP runs amok, my antihistamine nightmare. That was The Guardian. And this was just before they called the election. So if you think about it, it's astonishing I got any votes at all. Mind you, the opposition wasn't up to much.
Mm-hmm.
I think what swung it for me was Toby, actually. I took him around with me a couple of times on the campaign, and I think people warmed to me when they saw that I, too, had a child who looked like a whale who'd swallowed a hot air balloon. They felt I was one of them. So, in that sense, it was useful, although obviously not that useful, or I'd have won by considerably more votes than I did. How did we get onto this?
You were telling me about the quiz show.
Oh, yes. Anyway, I don't think we want to dwell on that. There's no point dredging up painful memories, is there?
Well, in many ways, that is the point of being here, to explore those difficult memories.
Speaking of which, I saw you on the television the other day. Now, did I dream this, or were you actually on a breakfast show taking a call from a woman who had an urge to kill and eat her husband?
No, you didn't dream it, Richard.
You told her to seek help. Why didn't you send the men in white coats round immediately? A self-confessed cannibal.
Well, she's not actually a cannibal.
Yet. It's still her stated ambition, though, isn't it?
We're here to talk about you, Richard.
So, are you on this breakfast programme regularly?
I've taken over as the resident agony aunt, yes. But let's get back to you, Richard.
You see, I can't decide whether I feel thrilled about it or just plain jealous.
About what?
Having a shrink who's on the television. I mean, how come you get to be on the TV? What about me? I've been paying a very expensive PR person a fortune to try and get my profile up.
You're still doing that, are you?
Absolutely. I sacked my first PR, by the way, Sophie. She turned out to be a man. Anyway, I've now got a young man called Piers, who really is a man. At least I hope he is. He's all right in a sneery kind of way. He tried to get me on the Today programme to talk about allotments, but they weren't having any of it.
Do you have a special interest in allotments?
Not really. My grandfather had one, and my headmaster's wife. Did I ever tell you about my headmaster? At the boarding school where they called me the Blob and filled my bed with custard.
Yes.
Fred Dimmock, he was called, and he was an absolute sadist, worse than some of the boys, and believe me, they were animals. One of them, and this is true, shot me in the foot during cadet corps, deliberately, and he wasn't punished for it. I was, for being less agile than a tub of lard.
Were you badly hurt?
I was shot, for God's sake, of course.
Was it serious?
I can't remember. I just remember being punished for it, and Fred Dimmock, who used to hang boys up in the showers by their ankles and leave them overnight...
Did he really do that?
All the time. He did it to me twice, because I wouldn't eat my turnip. And, you know, I'd eat almost anything. I once ate a bit out of my ruler. Anyway, I wrote to the television show, anonymously, obviously, and said he was a sadist and shouldn't be allowed on public television. And do you know what? I never got a reply. I have no idea why I brought that up, actually. Do you ever wish you were in your pram again? I remember it really well, being in my pram. A big blue silver cross thing, lovely and safe, especially with the hood up. I had a little row of ducks on elastic strung across in front of me, and they span round when I pinged them. And I wasn't aware of being fat at all, although, having seen the photos, I was actually a very large baby. I was just safe and snug in my pram, pinging my ducks. Sometimes I had a Farley's rusk. I wonder if you can still get them. Wouldn't mind a packet in my office as a sort of edible comfort blanket for when my wife calls. I suppose I should be calling her my ex-wife by now. She called the other day and said I'd blighted her life. The real problem is that I'm on the back benches again. I mean, the very back. Practically in the gents, metaphorically speaking. And I'm wondering, you know, if anyone is ever going to notice me again, because, frankly, I may as well be invisible.
That's been a recurring theme with you, hasn't it, Richard?
I wave at the speaker, and he never notices me, even when there are only 4 people in the chamber. I've been set up on a blind date tonight by my secretary, who obviously feels sorry for me, and I was wondering if she might have sex with me. Not my secretary, the blind date, although actually almost anyone would do, anyone at all who's female with a limb at each corner and a pulse rate, who didn't demand payment, just to remind me that I do actually exist, because I have a very strong feeling that I'm disappearing again. And you see...
I'm afraid that's all we have time for today, Richard.
Oh. Okay. I'll just take a tissue. May I? In case
Yes, yes.
I've been weeping a lot recently.
Goodbye, Richard. We'll talk about that on Friday.
Yes. Okay, then. Bye.